guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This from a guy, sounds like he's in probably his mid to late 60s at this point, and he shares his story, and as you can see it's a long story, about the last 45 years or so of his life with regards to his life adventures, his marriage, all that, and showing you from the perspective of some old school masculinity. Old school masculinity that's definitely been trying to be pushed out of our society for so long that so many young guys need. And he really gets into his life here, particularly with his wife, and how he did in fact marry a good one. However, even with the good ones, you're going to have in a marriage for 40 some years ups and downs, problems, things like that. Things are going to come your way, and real test to see how loyal she is with regards to if someone loses their job or you go out of business or problems like that and other things. But also how even with good marriages, and you're going to have ups and downs, a man still has to always stand strong. He has to check her when she is being difficult, giving him an attitude. He has to always pay attention to things and make it known that she pushes him too far. There's the door. She can leave at any time and he can replace her. And you're going to see it through this story. And in this story, this guy's wife sounds like he describes her. She's always very, very good looking. Guys always noticed her and liked her and flirted with her. But even though it didn't sound like she was, not intelligent, she just was very naive, and he had to definitely lay down the law lots of times to make her see reality. And I'll be going to go over here, and of course, simply that, how an old school guy thinks and how we need a lot more old school back in today's world, because this guy has zero tolerance for a lot of the whiny crybaby men that we have more and more of today, but recognizes obviously where the damage has been done and where it comes from. So it's a longer one, guys, but I thought it'd be a good one, a good tale to go over here of a lifelong thing. And while there are some things here I disagree with, and I definitely pointed out, our guy here, he's sharing his story because he wants to be heard, and he does want to help some guys out there as well. He says, "Dear SSM, a few months ago, I came across one of your videos accidentally. I enjoy your stories and updates, and I quickly found myself watching content back to 5 months ago. Gonna have to pace myself here." Well, I appreciate your support and watching all the videos going back in time, but there's a whole lot of videos on all three channels. Keep you busy for years. There's an issue within the stories that bothers me a lot. It's all the crying that the wrong men do. Boo-hoo, poor me. Be a man. I grew up with men that don't cry. Go find your balls in the freezer where the 304 hid them. Now, I'll give some levers to the younger men, teens and early 20s guys, when they do it, because I've been there and done that and got the t-shirt. When it happened to me, I had the tears for the first day, then it muted into rage. Well, I'm going to say this. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly about the boo-hoo, poor me, that type of crap. But remember, so many guys out there unfortunately did not have that male role model to show them the way. And so many young guys out there have been brainwashed by the narrative, the dark forces out there that have made traditional masculinity a bad thing. And it's the same dark forces that have made women think that traditional femininity is a bad thing too. And look what the mess it's caused. So I'm trying to do my part to help guys out here. But I agree with you about that, sir. I am retirement age, and I've been married to the same woman for over 43 years. We've been together through good times and bad. I would like to share my story with your younger viewers. All right, and it's quite a story. It was the 1970s, and I married the first time at 18 years old. Smack! Freaking crazy! I know times were different back then, but regardless. Which is not unusual for country folks at the time. In hindsight, I see that I was pushed into it by my elderly father, who wanted to make sure I wouldn't be alone when he passed a year later. Better to be alone than with a quarrelsome wife, or however that saying goes. My first wife and I were country mice that left our rural area in the Mississippi Delta to travel to the big city to go to college. We went to school full-time, and we each worked 20 to 30 hours per week to support ourselves. You hear that, guys? People went to college and worked, and guess what? They managed to do just fine. To all the parents out there that think that I don't want my kid to work during college, no, it's a good thing. Builds character. Respect for money, balancing the budget, that type of thing. There were not student loans in those days. I paid for my education as I went. Again, imagine that. Personally, I didn't have a good time. I went to finish as quickly as I could, and I finished my degree and graduated in 4 years. Another amazing concept. I had my first inklings of the ex-wife's cheating after our 3rd month at the university. We had one car, which was the norm those days. She had taken it to work. It got later and later, so I let my worry fuel into anger. I walked 5 miles to her work and waited outside the restaurant that she worked in. It was 4 hours past closing by that point, and she was still there. I showed my ass, and I got in her boss's face. He was a smooth operator and did his best to calm me down and ease my accusations. I never did trust him, and a few months later, I would overhear in the restaurant the manager's younger brother talking about how the foxy married chick that his brother was banging, we all knew who she was. And again, why you don't get married super young. So many reasons. I'm a good-natured man and have an easy way about myself. I let a lot of things roll off me until I get mad, and then I go nuclear. Boom, 0 to 100 in a second. I've always been a country boy strong from doing physical work growing up. At that point in my life, I was too trusting, too naive. I believed that everybody was honest and good. That was from the small town living where everybody knows everybody and everybody's business. Yeah, being out, but you know what? I would take growing up out in the country with good people any day than growing up in other parts of the country or the world. The problem is a lot of young country folks, especially back in the day, didn't get a dose of reality early on. And then they grew up and moved, and then they saw what people can be like. At the beginning of the 2nd year of college, there had been several men that she and I worked with, and I had problems being too personal with the ex-wife. She began to hang out with a couple of women that I would call questionable. Within the 2nd month of the fall semester, I got my first "we have to talk" in my life. She was moving out to live with the questionable friends. I was heartbroken with tears, and I tried to have a conversation with her family to try to get some insight, but they couldn't help me or wouldn't help me at all. Sorry it happened, man, but again, you got married too soon, too young, not knowing her. I mean, what do you possibly know about her 18 years old? And what level of mature life experience do you have at 18 years old? I know your dad pushed you into this. I know it was a different time period, but I still think it's foolish then as it is now. And I know you know that. By this time, both my parents had passed away. I was sad and alone. What I didn't have was tears. What I had was anger at her abandoning me. I watched from the sidelines as she paraded man after man around campus, hearing the escapades from other people that we knew. I think the young country gal here definitely wanted to experience a different lifestyle. After the new year arrived, I came home to find all her things gone from our home, leaving no evidence that she had ever lived there. I went immediately and found her in the student union with some frat guys and pulled her away to talk. Bro, you can't force anything. Just you cut your losses. But I know you were young, didn't know. A couple of frat guys tried to act tough, but I stared them down. I will tell you that she pulled the Band-Aid off. She had met someone, and she had moved in with him. She needed a divorce, so we got one. You don't want me, then I don't want you. Good, you're free of her. Growing up in the poor rural part of a southern state, she was fixated on money. I learned this early on in our marriage. She found her a boyfriend from a wealthy family and needed to get rid of me to make room for number 2. Monkey branching back then, who would have thought? Now here's the question. Why'd she marry you? I have to wonder if I want to imagine you were a very charming young gent from the country, but really, did her parents push her into this too? I don't know. In my anger, I said a lot of bad things about her, like she had more Twinkies in her than a Hostess factory, and things like that. A frat brother of the boyfriend came to have a meeting with me at my work. He told me that I didn't want to mess with him because he'd mess me up, and I shoved him to the ground and had my knife on his throat before he hit the ground. Yeah, remember, country guys grew up hunting and shooting and all sorts of other things that a lot of city folk don't quite get. Now, I guess depending on what part of the city you're from, obviously it's like a hunting ground too, but you get my point. Country boys always have knives in their belts. We came to an understanding. He would let the other brothers know to leave me alone. I'm glad you didn't get busted, dude. The divorce went through quickly, and I went on with my life. She went on with hers, and she immediately baby-trapped him. Got to secure that wealth connection. A side note here, about 7 or 8 years ago, I ran into her in a small restaurant in a small rural town in the middle of nowhere. Man, after all these years, huh? I was traveling, My brother and I would meet at some small cafe halfway between our hometowns. I was so surprised that she was still married to number 2, but a cheater is a cheater, so she's probably been running around on him for decades. We spoke for maybe 2 minutes before I excused myself. I know you were probably talking to her just to get information and make yourself certainly feel better about that situation, and I'm sure she was cheating. I'm sure those kids probably weren't even his. The university offered mental health counseling for students. Someone advised me to try it, and I did. The doctor helped me come to terms with being without parents and any close family to back me up. I struggled with my anger for some time after counseling, and I guess I still do today. Like I stated above, I go from 0 to 100 quickly. I won't tell you that I'm going to hit you in the nose. I hit you in the nose very quickly. Well, that's usually the best way to go. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. After the divorce and the next 2 years of college, I won't say that I was a Chad, but I did date a lot. I developed an attitude concerning women. I asked a woman out once. If her answer wasn't yes, then I never asked out again. Did you hear that, guys? Right there. You ask them once, they say no, or jerk you around, never again. Don't waste your time. There's too many women out there to focus on one. If she wants to play games, then I was done. It's my way or the highway. I dated short, tall, busty, flat-chested, heavy girls and thin girls. It really didn't matter to me. I found that I did like women older than me. The first older gal that I dated was 7 years older, and she taught me so much about the female body. I was so naive as a lover, she really opened my eyes. That's why back in the day, a lot of young guys' first times were with prostitutes. No connection, they can teach them something, I will note that a little bit of knowledge can go a long way, but it has a downside as well. More than one woman would tell me that they were in love with me after one date. I'm not that guy, and I beelined away from the ones in love with me. Today we call it ghosting. Yeah, they fell for you because you had the I didn't give a shit attitude. They knew, either by your reputation or by what you said, they weren't going to get a relationship out of you. So then, of course, they had to immediately fall in love with you. For the young guys, follow my second rule. Always wear protection. I think I've mentioned that a few times. A side tale. A sexy, and I mean sexy woman that I dated for about 6 months started seeing my boss behind his wife and mistress's backs after I stopped seeing her. He gave her the clap, and she gave it several of my friends that couldn't wait to have her after I stopped seeing her. I laughed at them whenever they came to me bitching about getting the clap. I smiled and stated, I always wear my Trojans. During the time that I was dating that other women, I became friends or buddies with a woman that would become my future wife. We did things together, not couple dating, but we met for coffee or met at the theater to see a movie and sometimes just hang out. We never kissed or touched in that romantic way. Interesting, the chick that became like your wing girl, that cool girl that you hang out with who's actually all right. I don't waste time with that, but to each their own. Interesting, you got to know her on a different way, then she became your wife. Her father had moved her family to the South for work after he married her stepmom. I knew her stepmom from my childhood and accidentally ran into stepmom and father in a restaurant, and I was invited to dinner at their house a few nights later. At first, the daughter hated me for invading their family space, but over time I was tolerated by her. It's funny. Her stepmom was a barber, and I was at her shop to get a haircut when my future wife came in disappointed that she had been stood up for a date. She really had wanted to go out to see a new movie. Being a gentleman, I offered to take her to see the movie since she was dressed to go out. After the movie, we stopped for ice cream where we would start to bond. She had been beaten and abused by her biological mom, locked in closets for days, beaten with frying pans and other punishments because bio-mom was crazy over her father leaving them. It's fucking terrible. My mother was a prescription drug addict and alcoholic, and I had grown up with all the trauma that an alcoholic parent could bring. Bro, I have someone of that description in my family, and believe me, I know darn well what that's all like. My mother was in and out of rehab during my childhood, and I learned that rehab only works until the next liquor store opens. Yep. My father was cold and unemotional. I had a sister a few years older than me that passed away, and it changed everything about our home for the worse. I'm sure that's why my mother became an alcoholic, and maybe that's why my father pulled away. You guess is as good as mine. For several years, we would hang out as a couple times a week. This is the girl that got stood up by her date. She tried to fix me up with her friends, and I tried a few times to introduce her to a couple of my friends that weren't pieces of crap. I started inviting her to go dancing with my friends and I when we went clubbing. It was the disco era. According to my wife, it was during a slow dance with me that she realized that she was in love with me. Yeah, you definitely had that effect on women, the ones that you obviously weren't interested in. Please tell me you weren't dressing up like John Travolta or whatever when you went disco dancing. But hey, different time. To clarify, when I say dancing with my friends, a normal outing was me, my best friend male, and 4 to 6 women. My buddy and I would dance with each of the women that came with us, and other women too. The ladies in the group were free to dance with any men that asked, with the knowledge that we'd be watching over them. The policy was they came with us and they would leave with us. Since we were regulars at the club, the bouncers respected that we would solve drunken men issues without their involvement. I can only remember a couple times when some drunk wouldn't take no for means no, and the bouncers had to step in. I have a friend from martial arts who is a bouncer. This dude dealt with so much bullshit, but he said most people, when they're drinking, they can't fight. They throw these haymakers at you, and you can see it a mile away. And my bouncer friend also said the worst people to deal with aren't actually drunken guys, drunken women, because they're unpredictable. They'll fight like cats, and they'll scratch, and they'll bite, and they'll kick, and all that. Yeah, it's easier dealing with dumb guys that throw haymakers and are drunk and falling over themselves than crazy drunk chicks. Can't say it today. In hindsight, I can see that she and I were more like a married couple than I ever was with wife number 1, even though we were not dating. She invited me to her work Christmas party under the idea that I was going to be introduced to a friend of hers. The party was in full swing when we arrived. I was introduced to her friend, and I thought this woman was going to be someone else's problem. I know that you get that. Sometimes you just can't tell when there is trouble. As a child of an alcoholic, I have never been drunk, and I have a very low tolerance for drunks. Same here, dude. I usually have 1 beer, and that's about it. The party was full of drunks. I don't care if you drink alcohol in front of me, if you use it in moderation, but I won't be responsible for people that can't pace themselves. Since the party was not my scene, I asked if she wanted to go dancing, so we did. Yeah, it's not your scene, leave. I have no tolerance for drunks, and I have no sympathy for anybody that passes out or anything like that. You pass out and fall in the gutter, it's your own fucking problem. I'm not going to help you. You'll learn the hard way. It was during a slow dance that we kissed for the first time, and quite a lot before I would take her home. She still lived at home with her parents. It was late, and we agreed to meet and discuss where we were going in this relationship. With a passionate goodnight kiss, I left. Yeah, it's a different ballgame. You've known her for a while. You've been hanging out with her. You became friends with her and all that. She drove, and we met at my place the next evening after I got off work. She knew about my cheating ex and how I felt about cheaters. I have zero tolerance policy for cheaters. I believe now and then that cheating is a choice. The cheaters know that it's wrong, but choose to do it anyway. Blame it on alcohol or drugs or animal attraction. Doesn't matter, it was still a choice. Exactly. That's why in all these stories I cover, when the chick, or in some cases the dude, blames it on alcohol or whatever, it's like, no. Alcohol only amplifies, enhances what you want to do. That's bullshit. People know what they're doing is wrong. At this point, I would have called her my best friend. Not female best friend, but best friend. She had seen me at my best and sometimes at my worst. I was very competitive, opinionated, jealous, protective of those I care about, and quick to anger if you press my buttons. And she knew this. Over the years, she forgets at times until I remind her. So she's seen you at your best and worst, and she still wants to be with you and likes you for you. These are good qualities here. And she also knows what you will not tolerate. That means she's not going to test you every now and again, my friend. If we were going to be official and date, then she needed to understand that above all, I expected her trust and respect. And I may never be able to fully trust her after wife number 1, but I would respect and love her to the best of my abilities. That's a good way to put it, the best of your abilities. And yeah, the whole trust thing too. Can't have a relationship without trust. If she decides that she wants another man, or she decides that she's unhappy, then I will release her from any obligations to me, and she can go her way. And I will begin a new adventure as well. I'll never tolerate a cheater, ever. I explained that I understood that men and women meet other people that they find attractive. It's biology. But we make the choices to act on it, or ignore it. I'm a pickup truck guy, but I do see sports cars that look nice, but I would never drive one. Correct. Look, There's a lot of good men out there that are married and they love their wives, but believe me, they see attractive chicks pass them by every day that, sure, they're undressing them with their eyes, and they're thinking, man, I would love to bang that chick, but you're not going to do it, even if that girl is literally like spreading them in front of you. And there are some good women out there who see dudes, of course, they're attracted to, but they're not going to do anything with, But sadly, we know it happens more times than they want to admit. There's one thing that I've learned, and it's been acknowledged in song. My older brother toured with Dr. Hook during the 70s, and the song, "When You're in Love with a Beautiful Woman," says it all. You can't trust your friends. Everybody wants her, and everybody needs her, and she's the most beautiful woman they know. Saying this, I know that all my male friends would like to sleep with my wife, given the opportunity. Yep, that's the thing. You're the beautiful woman. Yeah, you have the guys notice that, and you can definitely feel like, they're both their respect and envy at the same time. But mark my words, any one of them, including your friends, your good friends obviously wouldn't do it, but it doesn't mean in the back of their mind they're thinking, shit, she's hot. I mean, let's be honest here. But still, you're always on your guard. My wife and I have been dating only a few months. We had only been dating a few months when two former friends of mine had me distracted at a house party so they could lead my wife away and try to get some sex from her. Two former friends, huh? By this time, I had known that they had done it with wife number one. I shoved my way through the other guest toward the bedroom door that was closing. I grabbed Dee and pulled her behind me, then shoved the nearest guy backward to stumble onto the bed. They were shocked by my rage and immediately started with, "We just wanted to talk to her to see if she was the right girl for you." Bullshit, was my reply. We left, and I haven't seen those guys in over 40 years. Okay, so you went to a party, and these guys that you were acquainted with, that you thought were your friends, were banging your ex, and they were, putting this smooth talk on her, like, "Oh, I'm friends with Joe here," and she's not realizing this until then you come storming in. Okay. I should take a moment for my background. After we married, I found an old restaurant that was for sale by an owner. It was run down and failing. We bought it and paid off in over 10 years to the original owner. The restaurant was a destination restaurant, so we opened for dinner only because our out-of-the-way location didn't support a lunch business. It took nearly 5 years to really turn it around. Over the decades, I would expand it to 5 locations. Wow, that's awesome, my man. Good for you. I worked in restaurants for 4 years, and believe me, that took care of the bills and everything throughout college, but that wasn't for me. It's a whole different breed that make restaurants a career. Although, you own them, so that's a different ballgame. And you have managers to deal with a lot of the bullshit. Our business allowed my wife to leave her job and to be a housewife once we had our second child. With the price of daycare, she would be giving all her paycheck to the daycare. Since I worked 50 hours each week, my children would always have a parent at home. She did a wonderful job of raising them. Well, that's great. And I'm amazed that you worked only 50 hours a week at your own business, let alone with multiple locations here. You must have definitely took a cut in pay to pay more managers to take care of things so you could have a little more time with your family. I mean, some people, 50 hours a week is like, oh my God, 50 hours a week. When you own your own business, 50 hours is an easy week. We've always had a couple of friends that we did things with. The couples other than us were always the best to socialize with. Older than us were the best to socialize with. The friends that were our age have become heavy drinkers, and honestly, I didn't trust them or their wives. With my trust issues, I'm always observing. Guys, all it takes is being cheated on once and having your heart broken that you will never fully ever blindly trust anybody ever again, or being screwed over badly, ever. You always have to have your eyes open. You always have to observe. This isn't just me talking. This guy here is way older than me sharing his wisdom here. As our children got older, we hired a weekend sitter so my wife could work with me. It was wonderful to have her with me on the weekends when we were the busiest. Always observing, I did have bouts of jealousy. Customer flirting and touching concerned me. She never gave me any reason to doubt her. She didn't give you a reason, but still it pissed you off when the customers. It's one thing if they're being flirtatious. It's another thing if they're actually touching her arm, touching her shoulder. Over the years, and I might add, it's one thing if it's the job where it's a customer and therefore they want it, and there's degrees of the flirting, you know what I mean? I mean, let's be honest. Guys, you go to a bar and the female bartender's flirting with you. Guess what? Maybe she's attracted to you. It's possible. But the reality is she works for tips, okay? And she'll let you try to be charming and all that and smile and laugh back. And meanwhile, she'd be thinking, this guy's the biggest fucking moron ever. But I'll just laugh and smile and flirt back to get my tips. It is what it is. Sometimes the female bartender may like you, or the waitress. But remember, at the end of the day, they work for tips. Over the years, I had to have some conversations with men that I felt were too personal with my wife. As far as I know, they backed off. Though a few need a more personal interaction with me. I respect my wife, and I never in public or privately with friends ever disrespected her like most of my male friends do with their wives. Our sex life is private, at least to me. My friends are always commenting on their wives' faults while being vocal within our group of which men they want to bang. One of these friends I hired as my number 2. He was always on the prowl, even though he says he never cheated on his missus. I had to have several conversations with him about his improper connections with young, pretty servers that I employ. I do not want angry husbands or boyfriends coming to me. I would never have him working with me. If your buddy's working for you and he's flirting with the female servers and there's suspicions there, that's all it takes that could tank a business. No. The only way I'd have him working there is he cut that bullshit out. There would come a time when I would overhear rumors about my wife with him. Immediately, I confronted her. She denied everything and wanted an end to the rumors. I informed her that it was her personal interactions with him that showed others that she was failing the wife test. At that time, she had a friend that was cheating with my friend's neighbor. I went directly to the 2 men and confronted them. Well, good. And if she has friends that are cheating, she shouldn't be hanging out with them. In no means I would not accept any more rumors about my wife, and if either man approached my wife without me being around, they would be facing an ass whooping. He understood perfectly. I didn't hear any more rumors after that, but a few weeks later, on my birthday, I received some new golf clubs. My wife then admitted that he had helped her pick them out, and she took him to lunch for his help. In hindsight, I believe that they were in the early stages of an emotional affair. Like I said above, when you're in love with a beautiful woman, you can't trust your friends. Well, and also, you can't trust her. And so what's the deal with that, man? It makes me think of the scene from X-Men 2 when Magneto says, never trust a beautiful woman, especially one who's interested in you. In our late 30s, my wife came to me stating that she was unhappy. I asked what could I do. As she went on and on, I told her that she had the perfect life. She didn't have to work and only helped me a couple days a week. She had lots of free time for aerobics, jazzercise, and she could spend as much time as she wanted within reason. If she was so unhappy, then pack her shit and get out. She can move home with her parents. There you go, my man. Well, guess what? By and large, most women, and I say that with a capital M, you can never make them happy. Nothing makes them happy. If the guy isn't around a lot because he's working all the time bringing the money, she's mad at him because he's away all the time even though he's bringing in the money. If he is more time with her, then she's mad because they don't have enough money. And many other things. It goes on and on. I don't need to fill up the story here. Any of you married guys know what I'm talking about. He said, get a full-time job, do whatever she wanted to be happy, and children, and I would be fine without her. She cried, of course, because that wasn't what she wanted to do. She didn't want to face her father. After a couple weeks, things got back to normal. Soon, I would know that a couple of her girlfriends in their early 40s had left their husbands because they were unhappy. These 2 fathers were good men, but betas by today's standard. As good fathers and providers, these men were scooped up quickly by divorcees looking for a good provider. Those wives were not happy about it. I don't know about one of these women, but the other had remarried 3 times in 12 years. 3 times in 12 years. So her friends were all of a sudden reaching that point in their 30s. They're bored, they're unhappy, and they're going to leave their husbands. And it was rubbing off on her. This is why you pay attention to who your wife or girlfriend or girl hangs out with. I've always told my wife that women don't really like each other. They tolerate each other. When one gets divorced, she will find the friend with the best husband and get that wife to party with her until that wife cheats and then becomes the confidant of the husband, get them to divorce, then romance the ex-wife's husband. I've seen it more times than I can count, but I find great humor in it because these stupid entitled women, for some unknown reason, think that they deserve something better and more exciting than their husbands, that every one of them has changed. Well, as the great Al Bundy once said, don't try to understand women. Women understand women. They hate each other. It sounds to me like your wife, at least back then, I don't know how she is now, was very naive on multiple fronts, with the guys talking to her and flirting with her and all that, or how other women are. Now, a lot of women I've noticed, what I've been told emails and comments. They watch me for entertainment, of course, but also they learn a lot about women by watching me, because the things they typically don't get it. It's amazing. It's just how that goes. But yeah, I think that her actions, what you're describing, is like she's very naive, and also with like the guys flirting with her and all those type of things, or simply she's putting on like she's naive. I mean, I have to say it here. I'm obviously knowing that the good outweighs the bad, but there's some moments here, and clearly you got to lay down the law. It says here, she'll say things like, "He's not the man I married." They like to say that, and they hate my response of, "Oh, of course, you spent years changing him. He dresses the way you want, does the things that you like, goes where you wants to go. Of course he's different, and it's your fault. The women and my wife have called me an a-hole, and I am. A woman calls you an asshole, guys, it's a compliment. Or let me rephrase that. A woman calls you an asshole, it's a good thing. And I'm called an asshole quite often. I call them like I see them, I say, and I'm brutally honest in my opinions. If you don't want your feelings hurt, then don't ask my opinion. These same women look at me differently when they see me still riding my motorcycle in jeans and a t-shirt. Awesome. Yeah, guys, never change who you, unless you have some very negative qualities about, like you're an alcoholic, or you use drugs and stuff, or you're terrible with money, or you're a gambler or stuff like that. Those things can be changed, absolutely. But if you like to dress a certain way, don't change how you dress for a chick because she doesn't like it. Or you like to drive a truck, or ride a motorcycle, or play your guitar in your basement, or whatever you like to do, and she doesn't like, keep doing it. Because you changing who you are to make her happy ain't going to make her happy. And in fact, by you being who you are and resisting her, she'll like that. Even though they pout and whine and complain and all that. I've had girlfriends complain about different things about me in the past. And guess what? I never changed who I was, And it was amazing how yet they still stayed attracted to me. And eventually these relationships fizzled and I ended them, but you get the point. In hindsight, I believe that most married men that want a stay-at-home wife and do not realize how much time every day that their wives have to fool around if they are that type of a cheating woman. I was lucky because our restaurant's open for dinner only, so my wife and I had our days together while the kids were at school, and the children were home when I was at work in the evenings. I'll be happy to tell you that we were intimate an average of 4 to 5 times a week for most of our marriage. Not always, of course, until she went into menopause 12 or 13 years ago. Dude, if you had kids and you were still hooking up with your wife 4 to 5 times a week, that's fantastic and rare and amazing and good for you. It was the motorcycle, man. It was the jeans and the t-shirt and the biker jacket. You were like fucking Fonzie riding around your bike. We're dealing with Fonzie here, guys. Now it's 2 or 3 times a week, each week. Since she's older, she doesn't believe that she is still attractive and sexy, but she is to me and other men too. I observe how she is by being seen by other men. You can count the number of times that we've had big fights on one hand. No little arguments, the big screaming, breaking thing type of fights. And every one of them had to do with a specific friend of my wife. So right here he just said you can count the number of times of big fights on one hand, meaning they don't get into big fights, and that's good. Remember, it's important to watch her family and friends. We were in our early 40s, and this friend had a fitness business, and she talked my wife into working for her a few evenings a week. Our children were teens and could be trusted alone for a few hours. Our youngest daughter usually went to work with her mom on those evenings. The friend was married, and I did like her husband, but not her. I never trusted her. She was a petite blonde with a cheerleader body. Small chest, bubble butt, and she loved to show off her legs. She knew her legs and ass were her best features. I don't like overly friendly people, and she was always smooth talking to every man she met. There you go. It didn't take long to see that my wife was there to cover for her boss while she was banging other guys. That pissed me off. If your wife knew that she was out hooking up, cheating on her husband, then that says a hell of a lot to me about your wife. Or if your wife didn't know this and she was lying, then that's a different story. The first Christmas, my wife went to a restaurant for her company Christmas party. No spouses, and all the staff were women. Surprise! This is before cell phones were in everyone's pockets, and I could not check on her during the evening. But as the night got later and later, my wife wasn't home, and I was livid. I heard the garage door around 1:30 in the morning, and I was sitting in the dining room waiting as she came to the door. She smelled a cigarette smoke, and in our state, it's non-smoking in all restaurants, but bars allow smoking. I barraged her with questions. Where the fuck have you been, and what the fuck were you doing? Her excuse was dinner, then I countered with that she smelled of smoke, and unless she started smoking, then she was bar hopping. She admitted that her boss talked her into going to a couple bars to see the singing people were doing. You know what that means. When she says her boss, she means her friend. When she told me that, they settled on a local pickup joint in our area. Not caring if I woke the children, I screamed at her and asked her who she fucked tonight. I knew that her boss fucked someone, she was a cheater, and now she wanted to drag my wife down that path. She countered with, "Do you want to check my box?" "Hell yeah, I do," I said. She stated that I would not find anything. "So you used a condom then? If it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck." Words were said, and it ended when I punched several holes in the wall, and then grabbed one of our dining room chairs and smashed it on the floor, splintering it. I picked up a leg and waved it at her. I told her if I found out she did it with another man, that I would beat him with a broken chair leg. Over the years, I wouldn't let my wife throw that chair leg away because it represented something. Of course, the next day, her friend is calling me and apologizing like I would ever believe her. Okay. A few months later, her boss hired 2 men. They were gym bros, so I made a point of driving by to meet them. I shook their hands firmly. One noted that he was proud that I came by to meet him. He was smug, and I smiled and let him know that as long as they didn't cross the line with my wife or teenage daughter, then they didn't have to worry about me. Yes, her boss would bang the smug one by the first weekend. I overheard her tell my wife that he was small, but made it for it with enthusiasm. What a crock. I take a moment to reflect on the paragraph earlier about coming home and she was smelling like cigarettes. She was hanging out with her friend / boss and all that, and you were up, punched a hole in the wall and yelled at her and all that. I'm going to assume based on that she actually didn't cheat on you, but you made a point that it better not happen, and you broke the chair and you had that thing sitting around and made it clear you beat the hell out of the guy that ever did that with her. But the fact is that she's hanging out with this woman and she doesn't need the work, you know. I would never be allowing that, and I'm sure looking back you know that now. So guys, if your girl's hanging out with another woman who clearly is a cheater and bad influence, you got to draw a line in the sand, because look what the problems this is causing. Seriously, dude. And you said of your fights you ever had with her, it would involve this woman. What's more important? What should be more important to her? Her friendship with this so-called friend, or her family? Really? I told you in the beginning that she may have been a great friend to you and all that before you got together and all these great things, but that means she's not going to test you. That means there's going to be bullshit from time to time that you got to check her on. Sometimes something that I had trouble making my wife understand was that I was a known businessman in our community, and when she and the kids were out in public, they were seen by my customers, whether she realized it or not. My reputation in business was on the line based on their actions in public. Once I had a pretty young broker rep that wanted to take me out to lunch at my favorite lunch spot. After signing a contract for their product, I refused. I explained that I was a fixture in our community and I would not allow myself to be seen in public with a 20-something petite, pretty blonde, where I could become the talk of the town. It would affect my business and my family as well. Well, good for you. The way you said that you had trouble making your wife understand certain things, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I think that she's a bit naive. Or maybe she's just simply not as intelligent as you were. Or maybe you said she's very pretty, so maybe one of those things where she's physically beautiful, but she's not the sharpest tool in the shed with certain things. I mean, I'm being honest here. You write in, telling your story, I'm going to read it and go over it, but I got to mention these things. Or she was put on a big fucking act. I know a lot of guys are going to say that, but after you've been with her all these years, I think you obviously know that she just probably is very naive. After the second year of my wife working for her friend, she started to see what kind of woman she was. Oh, really? After all this time, your wife's starting to see that? Unless this boss / friend of hers was, hiding the real stuff was going on, or your wife, again, was just naive and not noticing it. The boss was divorced by then. Her business was successful, so she divorced a good man, and my wife and I watched a parade of men that her boss blew through. I quit trying to keep up with their names. In the next 5 years, she would marry and be divorced 3 more times. What? 3 more times? Married and divorced 3 times in 5 fucking years? Her last husband became a good friend of mine. We occasionally golfed together still. He was a good guy, so it didn't work out. She loves the Chads too much. She would confess to me how she loves sex, and the men she chooses don't and can't keep up with her. I ain't falling for that. Her business involved travel, sometimes during the years, and sometimes my wife had to travel without her. I was always concerned that this boss bitch would show up at my house when she sent my wife out of town. She and I tolerate each other, and I know that she would have sexted me to have something to hold over my head. Again, you should have cut that off instantly. Your wife didn't need that work. She was obviously doing it for fun. That's a whole lot of drama in your life and your marriage that could have been easily avoided. You know, you obviously have no problem laying down the law, and that is a mistake you made. And I'm not saying this like to be a jerk. I'm just pointing this out, and I'm sure you're aware of this now, telling this from this time period. To make a long story short, my wife and my daughter did a lot for the business. For some reason, they became the heart of the business for the clients. I was a fixture around there as well as a husband that was always fixing things. And an event happened with my daughter and boss bitch, and I got into it. I told her to eat shit and that she'd never get any help from me and my family again. When my wife found out about her boss and what happened to her baby girl, she quit and never looked back. Okay, well, it's about fucking time. Without my wife, she lost clients almost immediately and would be out of business in a couple of years. Well, good. She was a bitch to her female clients and a flirt to male clients, and she needed my wife to smooth things over with the ladies. You know that woman doesn't really like other women. Or you know that women don't really like other women. What I say earlier about the Al Bundy line is perfect. I'd never tell you that we're perfect, but there is respect. From time to time, I have to put her in her place. Guys, even the best relationships and marriages involve a guy having to put the girl in the place from time to time. It is what it is. When she's bitchy or mean or not forthgiving with the lovin', I'm not getting into it. I'll ask who's getting my lovin'. Who are you fucking? She's learned that if she wants a fight, she doesn't have to look far. I play to win. If she's texting too much, I want to see who she's texting. I'm not an ogre, but I like to make points whenever I can. I point out men that are too friendly with her, and she points at women that are too friendly with me. A critical thing happened to us in 2009. We lost everything that I had spent 30 years building. A new president came in, and his administration closed down the main producers of our main product within the USA. The cost of our main product went from $25 per case to $91 per case. Whoa, that's a big deal. And it's not like you can raise the prices to reflect that because the customers aren't going to buy it. We fought and hung fast as we could, but eventually the banks would force us out of business. We lost our house, all our assets, and forced into bankruptcy. Holy shit. We were left with 2 old cars and personal belongings. I am the bank's and the government's biggest hater. Between those two, we lost everything. Holy crap. I'm sorry that happened, man. And now we're about to see her marriage tested. Her love for you tested. I don't know what else is going on. I don't know about emergency funds and stuff like that, but I'll leave it as is. At a time when most women would have left their husbands and divorced them to find new, better financial men, my wife stood beside me when I felt defeated and showed me that my defeat by our creditors didn't lessen the bond that we created. She could have been like her friends that left good men when things were tough and would have run from husbands that lost their jobs or filed for bankruptcy. Well, that says a lot, my man. Obviously, she's done some boneheaded things in your time together, and you mentioned that there are fights, and there's times that you check her and lay down the law, and that friendship with that idiot, but still, during your worst times, she's sticking with you. That says a lot. I took a job in retail management, and my wife took a job for a high-end retail establishment. After 2 years, I was being groomed for a district manager position until our region got a new director, who only wanted ass-kissers as candidates for promotion. I transferred to a new region. After managing 3 smaller stores, I became the manager for the area's biggest store. I lost 8 to 10% weekly for the last year, and no one at corporate did anything. Within 3 months, I had turned the store around with a 10% profit each week and growing. The piece of shit regional manager was transferred to my new region and came into my store to meet with me. He wanted to know why the store had only had a 10% profit. And I replied that if you add the average 9% loss that it was down the past year, it was 19%. He says, why isn't it over 20%, was his reply. He was making an easy decision for me. There was a district manager position coming up soon, and myself and another manager will present at the annual state meeting for managers. Judging from the crowd at the meeting, I presented very well, but of course, the RD didn't promote me. Another ass-kisser promoted. Yeah, that drives me crazy. Yeah, good people don't get promoted because somebody else is kissing somebody else's ass. So, okay, you're all your business. I mean, here's the thing. You said you own restaurants, so I'm wondering like what you meant by what product per case, shop, and price. I don't know, whatever that may be. But the point is, your business you've been spent years building went out of business. That's terrible. It really is. But the guy got up, got another job, used whatever skills he had to get his life back on track. That's what fucking men do, guys, and that's really good. My wife's travels within the retail world was a mixed blessing. Her pay was very good for retail, but only 60% of what I earned. But the problem with retail is it's full of women. A few women are married, but the majority are divorced or single. Divorcees fall into two categories: bitter man haters or 304s. Yep, and there are out there many to sabotage the women that have good marriages. He witnessed this before, and I've done countless stories about this, guys, and many of you guys probably have experienced situations like this. So how are they going to rub off on his wife? The wife who's proven through her actions, I have to admit repeatedly, to be very naive and not the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to human nature and people. After the second year of retail, my wife had gotten several raises and promoted to assistant manager position over women that had been there longer. Uh-oh. Resentful bitches began to influence my wife's self-esteem and our good marriage. Her coworkers didn't like that I would every month or so drop by with a Starbucks or surprise lunch for my wife. As much as my wife enjoyed it, it didn't endear her to the other ladies. I could sense the depression breeding within her. I spoke to her about it, but she didn't want to look for another job. She should have gotten out of there, you know? It really is a shame. And this is why there's a term called frenemies. And, guys don't have frenemies. Guys are either by themselves or has some bros, and that's about it. Or guys they're acquainted with, have a good time with, but not frenemies, so they simply do not trust at all. I'm sure there's guys out there that may have frenemies, but overall, most guys do not have frenemies. But women have plenty of frenemies, and I've never been able to understand it. But then again, if you understand women, maybe that is because it brings drama into their life, and they like drama. I don't know. You 4% women out there can explain to me. But, yeah, and you trying to explain to get her to leave there? Nope, she's not going to get it. Over the next 2 years, she began to change here and there. Little things. And we would have had more small disagreements as she became more entitled from working with these toxic women. You need to nip that in the bud right away already. This makes you think of a gal I'm friends with who's very pretty, very smart, done well for herself and all that. But when it comes to human nature and people, yeah, I mean, not the sharpest tool in the shed. I mean, book smart, very smart, successful and all that. But, this is one of the few gals, I'm friends with her husband, that is like this. Guys like her, a lot of women are jealous of her, and she doesn't quite always see, and really I've known this over a long period of time, the ill intent that a lot of gals that she's associated with, work with, hang out with. So I'm literally picturing her as I go through this story here. She began to change, blah, blah, blah. Being postmenopausal, it became a issue for intimacy. She tried to find any reason not to be intimate. Afterward, she would always acknowledge that she could not understand why she didn't want something that she enjoyed so much. Sorry for you, betas, but I'm expecting my 11. Also, a little note, once a woman goes through menopause, intimacy becomes painful. You're going to need to use lubricant every time. I wish that I learned it before menopause. I could have used it to ease any discomfort during our intimacies when she was premenopausal. Well, if the juices aren't flowing like they used to be down there, then obviously you got plenty of stores and sex stores that have that lube that you can slap on your salami there and everything's working fine, as you learned. Having employed hundreds of women over the years, it's apparent that older women tend to forget that they love sex. No, they don't. They want it, but not with their old husband who got fat or bald or both. He desires her, but she despises him, and probably for some stupid reason. Well, if he got fat and he doesn't groom himself and he smells like crap or whatever, bald's going to happen. Yeah, you can put Rogaine on, but balding's going to happen. But the fat thing can be controlled. So yeah, I'm not going to entirely look. Here's the deal. Guys shouldn't tolerate if their freaking wife lets herself go and blows up into a blimp. And frankly, women shouldn't tolerate that either. So if she loses attraction for a guy because he's goes full Jabba, you can't entirely blame her if she takes care of herself. I'm not going to let that go. But, yeah, but if he's a good guy, takes care of himself and all that, and she's still Not interested because you're resentful for some stupid crap. That's different. Anyway. They need to be retaught to find those things about their husbands that were forgotten, the things that arose them in the first place. They can want and enjoy intimacy and get past the brainwashing of society. I see women that won't be with a hubby because of menopause, but will go out of their way to attract other men. Yeah, imagine that. Something that your dad probably didn't tell you, that as you age, your erections won't be as strong. Your testosterone weakens and you will lose a little length and girth in your youthful days. So don't freak out, it happens to you. After spending 4 years of retail, and the last 2 not being promoted, my oldest son and friend of his took me to lunch to discuss reopening our restaurant with his friend financing us. Initially, I did it for my son. I put the business in his name, and it was his legacy anyway. Within 4 months, we had secured a decent location, and I quit work to remodel the building. I did all the remodeling, woodworking, painting, laying laminate floors, install kitchen equipment, and only took 2 months to do this and get us operational. Well, that's awesome, my man. Circumstances of the time has made you go out of business, which is terrible. You did what you had to do to get by, take care of your family, and then opportunity came, you went for it again. That is an entrepreneur. That is being a fucking man and going for what you want without fear or anything like that. Good for you. Now, you knew how to run that type of business, and that's great, man. The community remembered us fondly, and our business has been successful. I'll never operate more than 1 restaurant again, and I will never borrow from a bank. I learned that lesson way too hard. I paid his friend back with the interest in 6 months, and we've added 1 food truck and looking for a second truck. If it was up to me, I would close the restaurant and operate for food trucks because food trucks are more profitable. Less expenses, less employees to waste your payroll dollars. The low overhead made it so inviting. Well then, if you're still doing that now, then maybe sell the restaurant and just operate the food trucks. You know, you're enjoying doing that. It's a much more profitable operation. But that's awesome, man. That's a great job. And I guess, okay, now I get why you went out of business, because you had the different loans for all the different restaurants, and obviously in 2009 the economy went into a recession. That was impacting things as well. It was the media and the politicians want to call it the Great Recession, but regardless, it was not a fun time. And I'm sure that impacted you as well. But yeah, maybe you got a little overextended with the amount. Maybe you're over-leveraged. I don't know what happened. But the point is, it happened. You survived, and you started this up again. And that's great. There you go, guys. With the restaurant doing well, my wife's manager was afraid that she would leave them and come back to work for us. She promised to stay, and she did for another year until the owners sold to a new company. The new owners started cutting everything and changing things that worked for decades, which made business go down. Imagine that. My wife's stresses, along with her changes in attitude, made her miserable. I came in one night from the restaurant to find her texting on her phone. I made a few comments about it. She got defensive and angry. She told me she could text whoever she wants, whenever she wants. So as I always do, I asked who was she cheating with. She went crazy over the accusation. She wasn't cheating on me. How could I think that she was cheating? Well, we've all heard that song and dance before, guys, in all these stories, whether it's true or not. But here's the deal. A married woman or a woman with a guy shouldn't be texting other guys. Period. I don't care. You know? End of story. You're not texting other women, hanging out with other women. So this ain't good. And by the way, if she was miserable at her job and you had a perfectly good business again, then she should have been out of there. You should have laid down the law. I responded that she was doing all the things that cheaters do. Secretive texting all the time, leaving the room on phone calls, or ending a call when I came home. Dressing nicer for work than for me. Being short and pissy with me over stupid things. Looking for fights, and I wasn't happy about the woman she was becoming. That's right, my man. Remember, they push you too far, you walk. And they need to know that you're going to walk. If she was tired of being with me, then she could pack up her stuff and go live with one of the kids. Amen. I'm keeping the new house, and she can go find herself a new man. And she better learn to like the backdoor stuff, because for some reason the younger guys like that. She gawked at me while tearing up. Of course, the tears. I gotta say it. Hobag Handbook Chapter 2. She didn't floodgate, but tears were there. She left me for the bathroom, and of course I looked through her phone for peace of mind. There were 0 inappropriate calls or texts. Text threads didn't reveal anything other than conversations between friends and her female boss. A few messages from men that we know that I really aren't comfortable with her receiving. I don't text her wives, but those texts were mostly about funny things, nothing sexual at best, as I could read into it. Well, that's great and all, and then there's no evidence there, and you're a smart enough guy to be able to see if texts were being deleted or there's other things going on. But regardless, it doesn't excuse her fucking bitchy attitude towards you, or everything like that. We call it bad days, but it seems like this has been going on for a while. And also, she shouldn't be talking to those other guys, period. If I were you, I would have gone down and told those guys, you're not going to be reaching out to her anymore. It's inappropriate. I don't text your wives, you're not going to text my wife. And you make it clear with your wife, that ain't cool too. Period. She doesn't like it, there's the door. She can go find some other guys that will probably want to give it to her through her back door. So guys, you can see here, through this story, we're not done yet. Yeah, marriages are going to have their ups and downs. But remember, she stayed with him when they lost everything. And obviously, he's mentioning a lot of bad things here, but we're talking about a whole span of decades here that obviously were lots and lots of good. And the point he's making this whole thing is, it ain't always going to be sunshine and roses, but overall, He says, our youngest, at this point I left her, I missed this part, my bad guys. When she came back from the bathroom, she apologized and we talked for an hour. She knew that she had changed and didn't like the person that she had become. She missed being happy. Well then fucking change shit, honey. I pointed out that she had chosen to bend to the influencers that she worked with. At this point I asked her if she wanted to come back and work with our son and I. She didn't want us to let someone go, so she could have the spot. I run a lean ship and she knows that. Okay, well that's nice, but still. Our youngest daughter was recruited to coach gymnastics and took her mother with her to the interview. The facility offered my wife a part-time job coaching position because of her 20 years of experience. So she worked with me on weekends and coached gymnastics during the weeknights. She was happier. It wasn't a month before she realized how much she had changed over these last few years. Shocker when she's around all these bitchy, miserable women that are divorced or single or whatever. Yeah, it's rubbing off on her. And again, based on this story, your wife sounds a lot like the girl I'm friends with, who's the wife of my buddy, who is very smart but very naive when it comes to people. Notice the bitchy attitude's gone when she's done hanging out with all those harpies at work. She took a hard look at the clothes that she wore, and our children reinforced how each of us had seen her change in attitude. It didn't take long for her to become close to the person that she was before. She's not the same, and neither am I. We were both affected by the circumstances of our bankruptcy and the changes that she went through at her retail job. COVID shut her coaching job down and she never went back. Our business was essential, so we never closed a day, but it was carried out for several months. We scaled back to family only for the first 3 weeks. Our son, one daughter, my wife, and myself. By the third week, we began to add back staff members that were homeowners with families. Our carry-out business has always been half of our sales, and it didn't go down, but went up. The lockdown forced customers to eat locally, and we offered curbside so they didn't have to get out of their cars. We were doing well. See, guys, you all remember those times. This guy learned to adapt, roll with the punches. Throughout history, the species that always survives aren't necessarily the smartest or the strongest, but the most adaptable to change. But there are times when being strong helps you survive. Being smart certainly always helps with being adaptable. Right here. Before the lockdown, I was interested in doing something online, and the lockdown reinforced that I should. I have a little online business that I'm trying to grow. Last year it made 70 grand, but this year it only made 32 grand. It's a work in progress. Hey, keep grinding. Figure it out, you will. You're a resourceful guy. And good for you. This guy's obviously no spring chicken, but he's trying new ventures. That's awesome. For your viewers, I would like to express that today's men need to man up and quit worrying about what others think about them. You need to be strong and never cry, or at least don't cry in front of the cheater. I've learned that a woman will choose whichever man that she wants, but whooping his butt will make you feel better if you're not the one chosen. It's always about respect and trust. If your wife disrespects you, then you call her on it immediately, and don't wait till she thinks she can do it whenever she wants. Yep, that's why I always tell you, like this guy here, he calls her on it. Now, there are things that shouldn't have happened in this story we all know darn well. She shouldn't have been at that job for so long when she didn't need to be. He should have tolerated her crap like he did for as long as he did, and eventually called her on that. She should have been hanging out with that friend who owned that gym or whatever that was cheating all the time and a bad influence on her. But still, be on your guard. A beautiful woman is always a target. Your friends would like nothing more than to snag your woman, and don't think that the men she works with aren't trying every day to get some loving. Correct. The flirty men at the grocery or restaurants need to be put in their place. Don't be afraid of being arrested or getting beat up by confronting any man that's trying to take what is yours. I've lost a few fights in my time. To be honest, most fights are draws because they get stopped by anyone before anybody really gets hurt. So don't worry that she gets pissy that you call down her boss or some other man when he gets too flirty. There's a balance. Yeah, you protect what's yours. You stand up for yourself. Don't take any crap. But it's also not worth going to prison over certain things. Let's just remember that. When you're right, you're right. Your dignity is important, and if her friends and coworkers are unhappy, then eventually she'll be unhappy too. It spreads like wildfire. The few times that my wife claimed to be unhappy, she always had friends or coworkers that were unhappy. What I tell you about paying attention to who her friends are or who she hangs out with. Misery loves company. Be a man, don't fold. It's time to cut your losses, and it's better to go cold turkey. Let her go. If she has stopped respecting you, then it's over anyway. I've always been upfront with my wife, and she could leave at any time she wants. Never cheat on me because I'm zero tolerance, and I have a scorched earth policy on cheaters. You have to. If she wants another man, then we'll divorce, and she can have all the men that she wants. It's that simple. I'll be fine. I made a point to keep myself in shape, even though I have put on weight over the last few years, since I had extensive shoulder surgery, and I was in a sling for over 6 months before physical therapy. At 6 foot and 190, I believe that I can find all the female companionship that I could ever want. My wife jokingly complains that I ruin her innocence by forcing her to see how people really are. Hear that? This backs up what I said about her being just very naive and not getting human nature. Right there. In closing, none of us know what the future holds. My wife's best and closest friend is thinking about leaving her husband of 20 plus years. From what I've seen of him, it's probably for the best. Oh, okay. Well, there are exceptions. When my wife told me, my reply was, don't let it affect you. Do not let it affect us or our grown children. I point out to her that the friend has issues because she doesn't respect her husband. He was disabled in the job a few years ago, so she supports the family. She has the man's role, and it kills any respect. My wife looked at me and replied that I was right. See? Right there. Man's injured on the job, and now she has to take care of the family, and she resents him and lost respect for it, like it was his fault for getting injured on the job. See, guys? But this guy's, when they went out of business, I'm sure when their restaurants went out of business in 2009, if his wife's pretty, she could have found some other dude, but she didn't. Write it in the record book, a man was confirmed to be right. Thanks for listening to my story. After having hundreds of employees over 40 years, I've been told firsthand some crazy stories, so maybe I'll write some and share them with you for the They Did What channel. Well, sir, it's a long story, but I appreciate you writing in, sharing about your adventures here, and you had quite a life. And ups and downs, just like any life will be. And you've shown that you're tough. You can adapt. You have perseverance. And guys, we have times when things come crashing down, but we find a way to adapt and move on. That's great. And with regards to your wife, yeah, very naive woman. She may be smart in some areas, but when it comes to human nature, terribly naive. I'm glad you always checked her on things, but some things obviously went on too long. But the fact that she stayed with you when you went bankrupt and everything says a lot about her. And I don't think she was cheating on you during those different times when bullshit was going on. I just think she was so fucking naive and got roped into things, you know. But anyhow, goes to show you guys, even the good marriages, there's going to be drama, there's going to be BS, but the guy has to stay strong always, not tolerate any crap. Check her when there's bullshit. I know I've said this 19 times, but you know it's a long video, so you know I'm starting to get a lot out of it here. Anyway, sir, good story and a good example of good old school masculinity that a lot of guys need. Alright guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.